So a further deconstruction and analysis of Kafka's work in terms of narrative and narrative devices and how this works and what the achievement is in terms of this text. In part 2, as it continues, we start to unpack the relationship Gregor starts to have with himself and with his sister and then his mother. In terms of modernism and modern writing, we're dealing now with issues of naturalism and realism coming into or cutting to the idea of what's happening underneath that rather extraordinary and baffling moment of Gregor becoming the cockroach, which indeed isn't anything but real, anything like the real. But everything else that happens deals with the urban, modern human. If Gregor had only been able to speak to his sister and thank her, it would have been easier for him to bear it. But it was, as it was, it caused him pain. The key there is the way in which Kafka has gone to the emotional area of relating pain to the reader. So, pain. This is a rather simple but elegant word choice. Pain, as we understand it in terms of what's happened before, has been physical. However, pain here is emotional. Gregor is in despair. Now that is quite human. That is suggests that Gregor's human self is taking a lot longer to decay than his physical self. It's a beautiful sentence, and it's constructed perfectly, and the fact that it ends with the word pain as opposed to putting in the middle of the sentence or at the beginning gives it that power and evocation. And it's that kind of writing you need to be inspired by in order to create your own work. The next big key word here is naturally. Now, of course, naturalism are characters who behave according to their status, etc. So what that means is characters who sort of are thinking about, or actually acting in the way we would expect characters to act. His sister naturally tried as far as possible to pretend there was nothing burdensome about it, and the longer it went on, the better she was able to do so. So in terms of naturally, you could also say it's her duty, it's her job, she should do this without complaint. The very essence of the modern urban human who is able to or asked to simply be that cog that presents a successful and strong society. One day, this is in the next paragraph, about a month after Gregor's transformation, when his sister no longer had any particular reason to be shocked by his appearance, she came into the room a little earlier than usual and found him still staring out the window, motionless, and just where he would be most horrible. In itself, his sister not coming into the room would have been no surprise for Gregor, as it would have been difficult for her to immediately open the window while he was there. But not only did she not come in, she went straight back and closed the door behind her. A stranger would have thought he had threatened her and had tried to bite her. Now that, firstly, is an interesting aside, isn't it? Now we're getting away from human behaviour. Try to bite her. He understands the kind of creature he has become. It's a rather strong word. Gregor went straight to hide himself under the couch, but he had to wait until midday before his sister came back. He seemed much more uneasy than usual. It made him realise that she still found his appearance unbearable, and would continue to do so. She probably even had to overcome the urge to flee when she saw the little bit of him that protruded from under the couch. One day, in order to spare her even this sight, he spent 4 hours carrying the bedsheet over to the couch on his back and arranged it so that he was completely covered, and his sister would not be able to see him even if she bent down. In that particular sequence, you're dealing with some pretty serious human issues. Mostly, of course, we're dealing here with the empathy for his sister. Gregor understands his sister's position and is able to empathise with it. But the audience also gains an empathy for Gregor because of the way he feels about this. He understands that his sister doing her job was simply out of the duty that she had to him as him being her older brother, according to the design of their particular world. But here he realises the difference between love and duty, the difference between a willingness and a purpose. Now we see that what the sister is doing is because it's the right thing to do, as opposed to the desirous thing for the character to do. She is not doing or willing herself to do it as a character normally would for purpose, for reasons of her own want. She's doing it because she has to. This creates complete despair on her part. It's quite sad. Now, in terms of writing, that's where elegance, skill and sophistication comes in. Using emotion almost in a controlled manner to build a sense from the audience, from the reader. So to be inspired by Kafka in your craft of writing, to unpack what he's doing, is to understand these key little moments and processes of his narration. Where does the writer, where does Kafka keep his narration? He keeps it within Gregor's internal sense of self. We don't hear from the sister at this point. We hear Gregor's point of view. The reason for that is we get empathy rather than cruelty. We would find the sister's reaction, whilst something we can explain, it would still come across as something rather cruel and inhumane on her part if we heard about her disgust. So it's very carefully calculated. We understand the value of what the sister is doing. We understand the concept of duty. We understand the concept of fear and shock and horror beyond the need to do and what she is meant to do.